The helicopter's rotor blades cut through the thin mountain air as Staff Sergeant Maya Chen adjusted her rifle scope one final time. Below them, the rugged terrain of the border region stretched endlessly, a maze of rocky outcroppings and dense forests that had hidden enemy movements for months. Her team had been tracking a high-value target for 3 weeks, and intelligence suggested they were finally close to cornering him. 2 minutes to insertion point, the pilot's voice crackled through her headset. Maya glanced at her 3 teammates, each absorbed in their final equipment checks. They had worked together for over 2 years, moving through hostile territory like ghosts, completing missions that officially never existed. Maya had earned her place on this elite reconnaissance team through sheer determination and exceptional marksmanship skills. Growing up in rural Montana, she had learned to shoot before she could ride a bicycle. Her grandfather, a Korean War veteran, had taught her that patience and precision mattered more than speed and aggression. Those lessons had served her well through sniper school and countless missions in various conflict zones around the world. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing, and the team moved out quickly. Maya took point, her trained eyes scanning the forest for any signs of movement or disturbance. The mission was supposed to be straightforward. Locate the enemy commander, gather intelligence on his operations, and extract without engagement if possible. Her sniper rifle, customized for long-range precision, felt familiar and reassuring across her shoulders. They moved through the forest for 6 hours, following game trails and avoiding the main paths that local fighters might use. Maya's training had taught her to read the land like a book, noticing broken twigs, disturbed earth, and other subtle signs that someone had passed through recently. The tracks they followed suggested a group of 8 to 10 people had moved through the area within the past day. As afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Maya spotted something unusual through her scope. A small compound sat nestled in a valley below, consisting of 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard. Smoke rose from one chimney, and she could see movement in the windows. This matched the description from their intelligence briefing perfectly. Maya signaled for her team to halt and established an observation post on a ridge overlooking the compound. Through her scope, she counted 12 individuals moving around the buildings. Most appeared to be armed guards, but she could not yet identify their target. The team would need to get closer for positive identification and to gather the required intelligence. They waited until darkness fell before beginning their approach. Maya led them down the slope, moving carefully from cover to cover, using shadows and terrain features to remain invisible. The compound appeared less guarded than expected, with only 2 sentries visible at the main entrance. Her team positioned themselves for observation, planning to watch the compound through the night and identify their target when he appeared. Everything went wrong at 3 in the morning. Maya had been watching the compound through her night vision scope when she noticed unusual movement in the forest behind them. She turned to signal her teammates but found herself staring down the barrels of multiple rifles held by fighters who had somehow approached without detection. Her team was completely surrounded. The enemy fighters had used a classic counter-surveillance technique, allowing Maya's team to walk into their observation post while positioning their own people in a wide circle around them. Maya realized they had been tracked from the moment their helicopter landed, possibly even before that. The mission had been compromised from the beginning. "Drop your weapons slowly," one of the fighters commanded in accented English. Maya recognized him as someone from their target photographs, though not the primary objective. Her mind raced through possible escape scenarios, but with 12 rifles pointed at her team from various positions, resistance would be suicide. Maya and her teammates had no choice but to comply. They carefully placed their weapons on the ground and raised their hands. The fighters moved in quickly, securing their gear and binding their hands with plastic zip ties. Maya's sniper rifle, the tool she had relied on for so many successful missions, was roughly seized by one of the captors. They were marched down to the compound at gunpoint. Maya used the opportunity to memorize every detail of their route and the defensive positions around the buildings. Even as a prisoner, she continued gathering intelligence that might prove useful later. Her grandfather had always told her that a good soldier never stops fighting, even when the battle seems lost. The central building served as a headquarters, with maps covering the walls and communication equipment scattered across several tables. Maya noticed that their captors were better organized and equipped than intelligence reports had suggested. This was not a simple rebel group but a well-funded and trained military unit with professional leadership. Maya and her team were separated immediately. The fighters pushed her into a small room in the basement of the main building while her teammates were taken elsewhere. The room contained only a wooden chair and a bucket, with one small window high on the wall that provided minimal light during the day. The door was heavy wood, reinforced with metal straps, secured with multiple locks from the outside. For the first 2 days, Maya was left alone except for brief visits, when guards brought water and small portions of rice or bread. She used this time to study her surroundings carefully, testing the strength of the door, examining the window, and listening to the sounds from other parts of the building. She could occasionally hear voices speaking in the local language, but could not determine if her teammates were being held in the same building. On the 3rd day, the interrogations began. The man who entered her cell introduced himself as Commander Khalil. He was younger than Maya had expected, probably in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor that suggested formal military training. He spoke excellent English and seemed to know more about Maya's unit and their mission than should have been possible. "Staff Sergeant Chen," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "We know why you are here, and we know about your team's previous operations in this region. What I want to understand is how much your superiors know about our activities." Maya provided only her name, rank, and service number, as required by military protocol. Commander Khalil seemed unsurprised by her refusal to cooperate and continued asking questions about troop movements, intelligence gathering methods, and planned operations. Maya maintained her silence, focusing on observing his techniques and gathering information about his knowledge and capabilities. The interrogation sessions continued for several days, always professional, but increasingly persistent. Commander Khalil never threatened violence or torture, but made it clear that Maya's situation was precarious. He explained that her team had been captured during an important operation, and that her cooperation could potentially improve conditions for all of them. During these sessions, Maya learned that Commander Khalil had received formal military training in several countries and spoke multiple languages fluently. He seemed to respect her professionalism and never attempted crude intimidation tactics. This suggested that he was confident in his position and did not feel pressured to extract information quickly. Maya also learned that the compound was much larger than it had appeared during their initial reconnaissance. Commander Khalil mentioned other buildings and indicated that this location served as a regional headquarters for a network that extended across several countries. The intelligence value of this information was significant if she could somehow communicate it to her superiors. After a week of interrogations, Commander Khalil's approach changed. Instead of asking questions about military intelligence, he began discussing philosophy and military strategy. He seemed genuinely interested in Maya's perspectives on warfare and soldiership. These conversations revealed that he had studied Western military doctrine extensively and harbored considerable respect for professional soldiers. "You know, Sergeant Chen," he said during one session, "in different circumstances, we might have been allies rather than enemies. We both serve our respective causes with dedication and honor." Maya remained largely silent during these philosophical discussions, but she began to understand her captor's mindset and motivations more clearly. Commander Khalil was not a simple terrorist or criminal but a professional soldier who believed deeply in his cause. This knowledge would be important for planning any escape attempt. As days passed into weeks, Maya established a routine that helped maintain her physical and mental strength. She exercised in her small cell, performing push-ups, sit-ups, and stretching movements that could be done quietly. She also practiced meditation techniques that helped keep her mind sharp and focused on escape planning rather than dwelling on her situation. The guards who brought her meals changed regularly, following security protocols that prevented her from developing relationships or gathering consistent intelligence about the compound's routines. However, Maya noticed patterns in their behavior and began to understand the overall security structure of her prison. Maya observed that the compound operated on a shift schedule, with the fewest guards present during the early morning hours between 4 and 6 a.m. She also noticed that her cell door was checked at regular intervals, but these checks followed a predictable pattern that might provide opportunities for action. The small window in her cell faced east, allowing her to track the passage of time and maintain awareness of weather conditions. During heavy rains, she noticed that guard patrols were reduced and that sounds from other parts of the compound were masked by the noise of water on the roof. Maya's military training had included extensive instruction in escape and evasion techniques. She began to formulate a plan that would require patience, careful timing, and considerable risk. The plan would need to account for multiple contingencies and provide options for both solo escape and potential rescue of her teammates. After 3 weeks of captivity, Maya overheard a conversation between guards that suggested the compound would be hosting a meeting of senior commanders from the regional network. This information indicated that her window for escape might be closing, as increased security during the meeting would make any attempt much more dangerous. Maya realized that she would need to act soon, before the additional security measures were implemented. Her escape plan was risky and depended on factors beyond her control, but remaining a prisoner indefinitely was not acceptable. She had information that could save lives and prevent future attacks, and she had a responsibility to her team and her mission. Commander Khalil's visits had become less frequent as he prepared for the upcoming meeting of commanders. During their final conversation, he seemed almost regretful about Maya's continued imprisonment. "I hope you understand, Sergeant Chen, that your situation may become more complicated soon. There are others in our organization who do not share my appreciation for professional soldiers." Maya understood the implication. Commander Khalil had been protecting her to some degree, but his ability to do so might be limited if other leaders became involved in decisions about the prisoners. This confirmed her assessment that escape needed to happen immediately. That night, Maya began implementing the first phase of her escape plan. She had spent weeks observing the construction of her cell and had identified weaknesses in the doorframe that might be exploited. Using a piece of metal she had carefully worked loose from the bucket, she began the slow process of weakening the wood around the lock mechanism. The work had to be done silently and in complete darkness, as any discovery would eliminate her chances of escape and likely result in transfer to a more secure facility. Maya worked in short intervals between guard checks, carefully concealing any evidence of her efforts. As she worked through the night, Maya thought about her grandfather's stories of escape attempts during the Korean War. He had always emphasized that successful escapes required not just courage and planning, but also the ability to remain patient and disciplined when every instinct demanded immediate action. Maya knew that her real challenges would begin once she managed to escape her cell. The compound was heavily guarded. She had no weapons or equipment, and she was in hostile territory hundreds of miles from friendly forces. However, her training had prepared her for exactly these kinds of situations, and she was determined to prove that her captors had underestimated her abilities. The sound of rain on the roof provided perfect cover for her work on the door. Maya made significant progress during the storm, and she estimated that one more night of careful work would weaken the frame enough to force the door open. Tomorrow night, she would discover whether weeks of planning and preparation would translate into freedom or deeper captivity. The second night of rain provided Maya with the perfect opportunity she had been waiting for. Thunder masked the sound of splintering wood as she applied steady pressure to the weakened door frame. 3 weeks of patient work with the small metal fragment had finally paid off. The wood around the lock mechanism gave way with a soft crack that was completely covered by the storm outside. Maya paused for several minutes, listening carefully for any indication that the guards had heard anything unusual. The compound remained quiet except for the drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. She slowly pushed the door open just wide enough to peer into the hallway beyond her cell. The basement corridor was dimly lit by a single bulb at the far end, creating deep shadows that would provide excellent cover for movement. Maya had memorized the layout during her interrogation sessions with Commander Khalil, and she knew that stairs led up to the main floor at both ends of the hallway. Her cell was located roughly in the middle, giving her options for escape routes. Maya slipped out of her cell and moved silently along the wall, staying in the shadows and pausing frequently to listen for approaching footsteps. Her military training in urban combat and stealth movement served her well as she navigated the confined space. Every step had to be placed carefully to avoid creaking floorboards that might alert the guards above. At the end of the corridor, Maya discovered a small storage room that had been left unlocked. Inside, she found cleaning supplies, some basic tools, and most importantly, a guard's uniform that had been left hanging on a hook. The uniform was slightly too large for her frame, but it would provide crucial camouflage if she encountered guards while moving through the compound. Maya changed into the uniform quickly, using strips torn from her original clothing to adjust the fit. She also found a baseball cap that helped conceal her distinctive features and hair. The transformation was not perfect, but in low-light conditions and with the rain reducing visibility, it might be enough to fool guards who were not expecting to see an escaped prisoner. The storage room also contained a detailed map of the compound that showed locations Maya had not been aware of during her imprisonment. The complex was much larger than she had realized, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways and underground tunnels. The map also showed guard posts, communication centers, and what appeared to be a motor pool with several vehicles. Maya studied the map carefully, memorizing the layout and identifying the most promising escape routes. The motor pool was located on the opposite side of the compound from her current position, but it offered the best chance for long-distance escape. However, reaching it would require moving through the most heavily guarded areas of the compound. An alternative route led to the perimeter fence in a less guarded sector, but this would leave her on foot in hostile territory with no transportation or equipment. Maya decided to attempt reaching the motor pool first, falling back to the fence route only if the vehicle option proved impossible. Maya climbed the stairs to the main floor slowly, pausing at the top to observe the activity level. The storm had indeed reduced guard presence, with most personnel remaining indoors. She could hear voices from what appeared to be a common room, and the sound of a television or radio playing local music. The guards seemed relaxed and were not maintaining high alert status. Moving through the main building required crossing several open areas where Maya would be exposed if any guards appeared unexpectedly. She timed her movements carefully, using the sound of thunder to mask any noise she made while crossing between cover points. Her heart rate remained steady as her training took over, suppressing the natural fear response that could lead to mistakes. Maya reached the exit that led to the covered walkway connecting to the motor pool building. Through a window, she could see that the walkway was empty but well lit, making concealment impossible. She would need to move quickly and hope that no guards looked outside during the 10 seconds it would take her to cross the open space. As Maya prepared to make her run, she heard footsteps approaching from behind. A guard was walking down the hallway in her direction, probably conducting a routine patrol. Maya pressed herself against the wall beside a doorway, hoping the guard would pass without noticing her. The guard walked past her hiding spot without turning his head, continuing toward the exit Maya needed to use. She realized that he was probably checking the walkway as part of his patrol route. Maya followed him at a safe distance, staying in the shadows and preparing to act if he discovered her presence. The guard opened the exit door and stepped outside, immediately pulling his jacket tighter against the rain and wind. Maya could see that he was not happy about having to patrol in the storm, and he completed his check of the walkway quickly before returning inside. Maya waited until she heard his footsteps fading in the distance before making her move. The run across the walkway was the most dangerous part of her escape so far. Maya was completely exposed and visible to anyone who might be watching from the surrounding buildings. She moved as quickly as possible while maintaining the appearance of a guard conducting routine duties, hoping that anyone who saw her would assume she was supposed to be there. Maya reached the motor pool building without incident and found the door unlocked. Inside, she discovered 3 vehicles: a military-style truck, a smaller civilian pickup, and a motorcycle. The motorcycle would be fastest and hardest to track, but it would provide no protection from the weather or from gunfire if she was pursued. The civilian pickup offered better protection and would be less conspicuous on public roads. Maya chose the pickup truck and began searching for keys. She found them in a lockbox mounted on the wall, along with vehicle registration documents that would be useful if she encountered checkpoints. The fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, which should be sufficient to reach friendly territory if she could avoid major detours. Before starting the vehicle, Maya took time to study the map she had taken from the storage room. She identified several possible routes out of the immediate area, including both main roads and smaller mountain tracks that might offer better concealment. The main roads would be faster but more heavily patrolled, while the mountain tracks would be slower but less likely to have checkpoints. Maya decided to use a combination approach: main roads initially to put distance between herself and the compound quickly, then switching to mountain tracks once she was far enough away to avoid immediate pursuit. This strategy would maximize her chances of escaping the initial search area while still maintaining reasonable travel speed. As Maya prepared to start the truck, she heard the sound of approaching vehicles outside. Multiple engines were arriving at the compound, suggesting that the meeting of commanders that Khalil had mentioned was beginning ahead of schedule. This complication could work in her favor by creating distraction, but it also meant that many more people would be present to organize pursuit once her escape was discovered. Maya started the truck and drove slowly toward the exit gate, attempting to look like a guard conducting normal business. The gate was manned by 2 guards who were taking shelter in a small booth, paying minimal attention to the storm outside. Maya approached at a steady speed, neither too fast nor too slow, and prepared to talk her way through if questioned. The guards barely looked up as she approached. One of them activated the gate mechanism without even stepping outside the booth, clearly eager to minimize their exposure to the rain. Maya drove through the gate with a casual wave, maintaining her cover until she was well past the compound perimeter. Once Maya was beyond direct observation from the compound, she accelerated and began implementing her escape route. The main road was empty due to the storm, allowing her to make good time while remaining inconspicuous. She drove with confidence but not recklessness, knowing that erratic behavior might attract attention from any patrols she encountered. After 30 minutes of driving, Maya reached the turnoff to the mountain track she had selected from the map. The narrow dirt road was already muddy from the rain, but the pickup had good traction and handled the conditions adequately. She switched off the headlights and used only the parking lights to reduce visibility while maintaining enough illumination to navigate safely. The mountain track wound through dense forest and rocky terrain that would make pursuit difficult for larger vehicles. Maya pushed the truck as hard as she dared on the slippery surface, knowing that speed was crucial during these early hours of her escape. Every mile she put between herself and the compound increased her chances of successful evasion. As dawn began to break, Maya realized that her escape would soon be discovered if it had not been already. The morning shift change would include a check of all prisoners, and the guards would find her cell empty. Once the alarm was raised, every available resource would be dedicated to recapturing her before she could reach friendly forces or communicate intelligence about the compound. Maya stopped the truck in a dense grove of trees and took time to assess her situation. She had traveled approximately 60 miles from the compound, moving steadily deeper into the mountain region. The fuel gauge now showed just under half full, which should be sufficient to reach the border region if she could maintain her current rate of progress. However, Maya knew that continued use of the vehicle would become increasingly dangerous as daylight improved visibility and as pursuit efforts intensified. She needed to make a decision about whether to continue driving or abandon the truck and proceed on foot through terrain that would be nearly impossible for vehicles to navigate. Maya chose to continue driving for another hour, using the remaining darkness to maximize her distance from the compound. After that, she would abandon the vehicle and continue on foot, relying on her survival training and knowledge of escape and evasion techniques to reach safety. The decision proved wise when Maya spotted headlights in her rearview mirror just as she was preparing to abandon the truck. Multiple vehicles were following her route, confirming that her escape had been discovered and that organized pursuit was underway. Maya immediately drove the truck deeper into the forest and parked it in a ravine where it would be hidden from aerial observation. Maya gathered everything useful from the truck before abandoning it. She found a basic toolkit, some rope, and a small amount of food in the cab. The guard uniform she was wearing provided some protection from the weather, but she would need to find better equipment soon if she was to survive an extended period in the wilderness. Maya began moving on foot through the forest, using game trails and ridgelines to maintain her direction toward the border region while staying hidden from ground patrols. Her military survival training included extensive experience with wilderness navigation, shelter construction, and foraging for food and water. The pursuit was systematic and thorough. Maya could hear helicopters in the distance as dawn broke fully, and she knew that thermal imaging equipment would make hiding much more difficult during daylight hours. She needed to find caves or other natural shelters that would mask her heat signature and provide concealment until darkness returned. Maya discovered a system of small caves in a rocky outcrop that provided perfect concealment from both ground and air search efforts. The caves were deep enough to hide her thermal signature and positioned to offer good observation of the surrounding area. Maya settled in to wait out the daylight hours, knowing that her pursuers would be most active during peak visibility conditions. From her hiding place, Maya could observe the search pattern being used by her pursuers. Helicopters worked in coordination with ground teams, systematically covering grid squares and focusing particular attention on roads, trails, and other obvious travel routes. The search was professional and well-organized, confirming that Commander Khalil was directing the effort personally. As Maya watched the search activity, she began planning her next moves. She would need to travel primarily at night, use terrain features to avoid detection, and find sources of food and water along the way. Most importantly, she would need to avoid populated areas where local residents might report her presence to the authorities. Maya also began considering her ultimate objectives beyond simple escape. She had gathered significant intelligence about the enemy compound, organization, and leadership that could be valuable to her superiors. However, this information would only be useful if she could successfully communicate it to friendly forces. The nearest friendly position was estimated to be at least 100 miles away through difficult mountain terrain. Maya would need to travel for several days while avoiding pursuit, and she would need to do it without proper equipment or supplies. The challenge was significant, but her training had prepared her for exactly this type of situation. As evening approached, Maya prepared to resume her journey. The search activity had decreased somewhat as helicopters returned to base for refueling and maintenance. Ground patrols continued, but they were spread over a much larger area and were easier to avoid in the darkness. Maya left her cave shelter and began moving through the forest again, staying alert for any signs of pursuit while making steady progress toward her ultimate destination. She had successfully completed the first phase of her escape, but the most dangerous part of her journey was still ahead. Maya traveled through the mountain wilderness for 3 days, moving only during darkness and hiding in carefully selected shelter sites during daylight hours. Her survival training served her well as she navigated by stars, found water sources, and supplemented her meager food supplies with edible plants and roots she recognized from field manuals. The pursuit had been relentless but predictable. Commander Khalil's forces used standard search patterns that Maya could anticipate and avoid. Helicopters continued their grid searches during daylight, while ground patrols followed main travel routes and obvious hiding places. Maya stayed ahead of them by using terrain features they overlooked and by moving through areas that seemed too difficult or dangerous for an escaped prisoner to traverse. On the 4th morning, Maya observed something that changed her entire situation. From a ridge overlooking a valley, she watched through improvised binoculars made from scavenged glass as a small patrol of 5 fighters established a temporary base in an abandoned farm building. The patrol was clearly part of the search effort, but they had positioned themselves poorly and seemed overconfident about their security. Maya realized that this patrol represented an opportunity to gather equipment and intelligence that could significantly improve her chances of reaching safety. More importantly, she had begun to feel the psychological weight of constantly running and hiding. Her military training had taught her that sometimes the best defense was a calculated offensive action. Maya spent the entire day observing the patrol, noting their routines, equipment, and communication procedures. The fighters maintained minimal security during daylight hours, apparently believing that an escaped prisoner would be focused solely on evasion rather than confrontation. They had established no perimeter guards and conducted only sporadic radio checks with their headquarters. The patrol leader carried what appeared to be a satellite phone, which would allow Maya to communicate directly with friendly forces if she could acquire it. 2 of the fighters had modern assault rifles, and Maya observed that they had sufficient food and water supplies to sustain a much longer journey than her current resources would allow. As evening approached, Maya finalized her plan for neutralizing the patrol. The operation would be extremely dangerous, as she had no weapons beyond a small knife she had fashioned from metal scavenged from the abandoned truck. However, Maya's sniper training had included extensive instruction in close combat techniques, and she was confident in her ability to succeed if she could achieve surprise. Maya waited until well after midnight before beginning her approach to the farm building. The patrol had established a watch rotation, but only 1 guard was awake at any time, and that guard focused his attention on the main approach road rather than the surrounding terrain. Maya approached from the rear of the building, using a drainage ditch to get within 50 meters without being detected. The guard was positioned on a small porch at the front of the building, smoking cigarettes and occasionally walking a few steps in each direction before returning to his chair. Maya timed his movements for 30 minutes before making her move, identifying a pattern that would give her approximately 2 minutes to reach the building and enter without being seen. Maya crawled across the open ground during the guard's next cigarette break, reaching the rear wall of the building just as he finished and resumed his position on the porch. The building had several windows, and Maya was able to locate one that was partially open and would allow silent entry into what appeared to be a storage room. Inside the building, Maya moved with extreme caution, testing each floorboard before putting her full weight on it and pausing frequently to listen for any sounds that might indicate the sleeping fighters were awakening. She had identified the locations where each man was sleeping during her day-long observation, and she knew that the patrol leader slept in a separate room where he kept the communication equipment and weapons. Maya's first objective was the patrol leader, as he represented the greatest threat due to his training and leadership experience. She approached his sleeping area silently, noting that he had placed his rifle within arm's reach, but had not posted any warning devices that might alert him to an intruder's presence. The neutralization was quick and silent, accomplished before the patrol leader could fully awaken or call out to his companions. Maya immediately secured his weapon and communication equipment, giving her significant advantages for dealing with the remaining members of the patrol. Maya moved systematically through the building, using her newly acquired rifle and her knowledge of each fighter's location to maintain complete control of the situation. Her military training had emphasized the importance of speed and decisiveness in close combat situations, and she applied those lessons effectively. Within 15 minutes, Maya had completely neutralized the patrol and secured all their equipment and supplies. Most importantly, she had acquired the satellite phone, which would allow her to contact friendly forces and arrange for extraction. She also had sufficient weapons, ammunition, food, and water to sustain herself for an extended period if necessary. Maya's first priority was establishing communication with her unit's headquarters. The satellite phone required several minutes to acquire signal in the mountainous terrain, but eventually connected to a military communication network. Maya used proper identification codes to authenticate her identity and began transmitting critical intelligence about the enemy compound and organization. The conversation with headquarters revealed that Maya's team had been listed as missing in action, and that limited search and rescue operations had been conducted in the area where their helicopter had landed. Maya provided precise coordinates for the enemy compound and detailed information about its layout, defenses, and leadership structure. Maya also learned that significant changes had occurred in the regional situation during her captivity. Friendly forces had been reinforced and were planning major operations against enemy positions throughout the area. Maya's intelligence about Commander Khalil's compound would be extremely valuable for these upcoming missions. Headquarters informed Maya that extraction would be difficult due to the distance involved and the level of enemy activity in the area. However, they provided her with coordinates for a rally point where she could meet a reconnaissance team that would be inserted to gather additional intelligence about enemy positions. The rally point was approximately 40 miles from Maya's current location, requiring 2 more days of travel through terrain that was becoming increasingly active with enemy patrols searching for her. However, Maya now had proper equipment and weapons that would allow her to defend herself if discovered. Maya spent the remainder of the night organizing the equipment she had captured and preparing for continued movement toward the rally point. She selected the best weapons and ammunition, gathered sufficient food and water for the journey, and prepared improvised explosive devices using materials she found among the patrol's supplies. As dawn broke, Maya discovered that her attack on the patrol had created an unexpected opportunity. Radio communications indicated that the patrol's failure to maintain scheduled contact checks had triggered a major search effort. Multiple units were converging on the farm building, which meant that enemy forces were concentrating in one area rather than maintaining their broader search pattern. Maya realized that she could use this concentration of enemy forces to her advantage. Instead of simply evading the searchers, she could observe their movements and communication procedures, gathering intelligence that would be valuable for the larger military operation being planned by friendly forces. Maya established a concealed observation post on a ridge overlooking the farm building and began systematically recording enemy unit movements, communication procedures, and leadership personnel. Her sniper training had included extensive instruction in reconnaissance techniques, and she was able to gather detailed intelligence about enemy capabilities and organization. Over the next 6 hours, Maya observed approximately 50 enemy fighters arrive at the farm building to investigate the neutralized patrol. The response was well organized and professional, confirming that Commander Khalil was personally directing the search effort. Maya was able to identify several senior leaders and document their communication equipment and procedures. Most importantly, Maya discovered that Commander Khalil himself had arrived at the farm building to investigate the situation personally. Through her scope, she could see him examining the scene and directing the expanded search effort. This presented Maya with an opportunity that could significantly impact the larger conflict in the region. Maya had to make a crucial decision about her priorities. She could continue moving toward the rally point and focus on reaching safety with the intelligence she had already gathered. Alternatively, she could attempt to eliminate Commander Khalil, which would severely disrupt enemy operations but would also increase the risk to her own survival significantly. Maya's military training had emphasized that individual actions could sometimes have strategic impact far beyond their immediate tactical effect. Commander Khalil was clearly a key leader, whose loss would create significant disruption in enemy operations. However, attempting to eliminate him would require Maya to abandon her escape plan and engage a much larger force. After careful consideration, Maya decided that the strategic value of eliminating Commander Khalil outweighed the personal risk involved. She began planning an ambush that would maximize her chances of success, while providing escape routes if the situation became untenable. Maya's plan involved using the improvised explosive devices she had prepared to create diversions that would separate Commander Khalil from his security detail. She would then use her sniper skills to eliminate him from long range before extracting under cover of the confusion caused by the explosions. Maya spent several hours positioning the explosive devices at strategic locations around the farm building, using remote detonation systems that would allow her to control the timing precisely. She also prepared multiple escape routes and cached additional supplies at various locations, in case she became separated from her main equipment. The ambush began at sunset, when Maya detonated the first explosive device at a location that drew most of the security personnel away from Commander Khalil's position. As the fighters responded to the explosion, Maya moved to her predetermined firing position and prepared to engage her target. Through her scope, Maya could see Commander Khalil attempting to coordinate the response to the attack while maintaining communication with his headquarters. He was positioned in partial cover, but Maya had a clear shot at approximately 400 meters range, well within her capabilities, under ideal conditions. Maya controlled her breathing and heart rate, applying the fundamentals of marksmanship that had been drilled into her through years of training. The shot had to be perfect, as she would have no opportunity for a follow-up before enemy forces located her position and began returning fire. The shot was successful, achieving the strategic objective Maya had set for herself. Commander Khalil was eliminated, creating immediate chaos among the enemy forces who had depended on his leadership and coordination. Maya immediately began her extraction, using the confusion caused by the attack to escape before organized pursuit could be established. Maya moved rapidly through terrain she had scouted during her observation period, staying ahead of the disorganized search efforts that followed. The enemy forces were clearly struggling to maintain coordination without their commander's leadership, and their pursuit was much less effective than the previous systematic search. Maya reached the rally point 2 days ahead of schedule, where she was met by a reconnaissance team that had been monitoring her radio transmissions. The team confirmed that her elimination of Commander Khalil had created significant disruption in enemy operations throughout the region, contributing to the success of the larger military operation that was already underway. Maya was extracted by helicopter and returned to friendly territory, where she underwent extensive debriefing about her experiences and observations. The intelligence she had gathered proved invaluable for subsequent operations, and her actions during captivity and escape were recognized as contributing significantly to the overall mission's success. Maya's teammates, who had also been held at the compound, were rescued during a special operations raid that was planned using the intelligence she had provided. All team members survived their captivity and were successfully returned to friendly forces. The compound that had held Maya prisoner was completely neutralized during the larger military operation, eliminating a significant threat to regional stability and demonstrating the effectiveness of properly trained and equipped special operations personnel operating in hostile territory. Maya's experience demonstrated that even in the most difficult circumstances, properly trained soldiers could not only survive, but could actively contribute to mission success through initiative, courage, and the application of professional skills. Her escape and subsequent actions proved that capture was not the end of a soldier's contribution to the mission, but sometimes just the beginning of a different type of operation.